Hey everybody, this is Dean at Motion Media, and today we're going to look at texturing an object here. This is part of a mech that I'm building. This is the arm section, and what we're going to look at is using multiple mapping coordinates to get a complex texture going and not doing any UV unwrap. So what I'm going to do is build a few layers. There's going to be a base layer that you're seeing now that is made up of a gradient ramp, and it's going to have its own set of mapping coordinates using mapping channel 1, and then we're going to do 2 more, and then we're going to apply that to everything. I'm narrating after I've already made this video, so I'm just going to kind of speak or talk about things that are important. Right now I'm just setting up the gradient ramp, and this is probably less of a tutorial, even though there is information that you can get from here that'll help you with things, but this is more of an over-the-shoulder just watching a workflow. So this one's a little bit longer, about 45 minutes. So if you're an advanced Max user, you can kind of scrub through here and get past some of the parts that you may already know pretty well. The design for this mech was done by Rolf Moore, a very good friend of mine that I've worked with for years. And this is going to ultimately be in a short film, so it has to be photoreal, and Motion Media is going to do a complete tutorial on the making of this entire project. We're literally recording from building the first piece all the way through the finished comped scenes, so we'll be sharing that with all of you in the months to come. So what I'm doing is the other part of this technique that I really like, or gives me a lot of control, is I don't know exactly what the designer is going to give me in the way of the color or the design for any of the elements, the dirt layers, the mask, the colors of the vehicle. So what I'm doing is just setting up these generic maps that I can go back in later and just slug in new ones without, any effort at all, and I'll still have access to all of the mapping coordinates for each individual thing. So you'll see as we go through this, you can scale everything properly, and get really detailed with it, and you can do it all on the fly. So I know I'm not a big UV unwrap person, so I'm always looking for, a shortcut, if you will, and this works pretty well. It's not perfect, but it works pretty well. So here I'm just trying to get the transitions between each color there as crisp as I can. You can see I rotated the map on the W angle 45 degrees as opposed to using the mapping coordinates. I want them to be pretty unified. Okay, so I'm taking this gradient ramp and I'm turning it into a composite map. I'm adding another layer, and that layer is going to be a dirt map, and we're going to use the blend modes in composite here to just mix these two together. Again, I'm really lazy. and I don't want to go through and try to paint something and do all of that, and then the designer's going to come back and say, oh, I hate everything you did, do this, do that. So this allows me the ability, just a lot of flexibility, and even though this took 40 minutes, whenever I get the new stuff or the new maps, I can throw it in, ready to go. Okay. Now this dirt map is getting its own mapping coordinates. So you can see I changed to channel 2, and I'm also I did a bitmap fit so that new set of mapping coordinates preserves the aspect ratio of the texture. That is something that I may have to go back and redo depending on what size textures I end up with. That's a habit of mine. I like to whenever possible, preserve the aspect ratio of any map that I'm using. Just always looks better, more correct. Now I'm renaming the coordinates. Something I noticed, I ended up copying and pasting these coordinates to multiple objects, and unfortunately it does not keep the name when you copy and paste it to another object, so that's a little annoying, but I ultimately only have 3, so I remembered which was which, but it would be nice if it copied the names. So here I'm just naming the texture so that I can identify it when I search later. Okay, now I'm going to turn this composite into a mask. We're going to add a mask, and then we're going to give it its own set of mapping coordinates on channel 3. You can see that's what I'm doing here. Add another UV and change the mapping channel, bitmap fit to the mask, and then I'm going to kind of scale it into position there. And I keep forgetting to put it in sub-object mode. My cursor doesn't work so well when I'm recording at home, and I'm in shaded mode, so that's why I appear to be moving like a invalid. Okay. So before I came in and did all this in Max, I made sure that all the maps that I was using in this were tileable. So I didn't tape that, but most people know how to make maps tileable these days using offset in Photoshop. And so now I just adjusted the diffuse color because that's going to be the color that shows through from the mask. So it's masking out this texture we've created and showing us the base diffuse color, which is white in this case. So you can see it gives this cool kind of dirty kind of paint look, or I don't know, maybe he's parked near a tree with a lot of birds. Ultimately, this color scheme may change depending on the environment that the vehicle is ultimately in, which I think is Mars, so we'll probably go red, but whatever. That's what it is now. Basically setting up a template for myself for later on. And I'll repeat this technique for all the various body parts, the cab, the body, the legs. But of course right now we're just looking at the arm. Now when you have box mapping, you run into this where you get things go in a different direction. Later on I go through and individually select top and bottom faces and rotate the map properly. Sometimes I do different maps or break them away, but it is something you need to pay attention to and look at just to see, if you can either get away with it or if you need to make changes. I think this one's pretty close, but I do ultimately make some changes to it. But for the moment, it's fine. And now I'm going to rename this map, or modifier. Okay, so that's the basic setup. And now I'm just changing some of the material IDs, as I'm going to put some variants of the same texture at different levels on the same object. So now I'm taking that material that we just made, and I'm going to make a multi-sub-object material. And I always tell people you think of a multi-sub-object material as a briefcase, and the main material, which I'm naming Mech Arm Shoulder Multi, is the briefcase, and inside it are different, as many as you want, different textures or shaders that can be placed on a single object using material IDs, which you saw we changed in sub-object mode of that shoulder piece. So basically all I did was I made another version of the same texture that's just slightly darker. I want these pieces underneath a little darker. You obviously may have noticed I'm using V-Ray. I'm a V-Ray person, and all of these things are V-Ray centric: V-Ray camera, lights, frame buffer, and materials. You get the most speed and accuracy when you do it that way. And any of you who've watched any of my other stuff know I do that all the time. Like most 3D animators, I love to render. It's like a built-in break. Alright. Okay, so as I'm looking at this render, I'm realizing that I feel like the paint lines are too straight. So I just introduced a teeny bit of noise at a really small amount. You can see the first thing I did was adjust the levels there as I turned it to fractal. What that does is it adds more detail to the noise algorithm. And so, again, because I thought about this after the fact, I had to go and change it in both materials individually. And again, this is, you see me turning up the levels. This is, so I did them exactly the same so that they match up. And this is what I say about this is less of a tutorial and a little bit more of an over a shoulder to see, as I watch these back, you're like, oh man, I look really stupid. But that's the process. For me, I'm fairly visual, and I can think about it in my head, but until I actually see it, I'm not exactly sure what I want to change it to. That's another interesting thing. I think the process, like I feel like I can identify when something's wrong, but I don't always know how to make it right the first time. So anyways, saving, always saving. Okay, now I'm unhiding the other components. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically go through the entire piece and do that same copy and paste those mapping coordinates across all the different pieces. And I ultimately did more to it and made other changes, so even though this ends up being really, really close, I did make a lot of changes. So here I'm just selecting and copying the mapping coordinates from the main piece that we just did. I'm freezing it so I won't select it again. And then I'm just going to paste it. I'm going to get rid of the old mapping coordinates and paste it to the new object. You can see that it did not take the names over. Again, that's just irritating, but whatever. So I'm just looking, see if it went on there alright. Can't really see, so I think yeah. So what's going on here is that this had a previous set of textures on it, and thus different material IDs, and that's what I'm figuring out here as I try to identify why the texture is not showing up in the viewport, and then I realize I select the faces and change them to the correct number. It's amazing what happens when you do it correctly. There we go. Again, I'm moving kind of slow and awkwardly because of the recording. Here I'm trying to figure out what coordinates move the gradient, and I think I figured it out. So I'm doing nothing more than just trying to get it into a pleasing position. Ultimately, after I apply it to everything, I am able to quickly go in and move mapping coordinates around to line up all the various different striping. And again, that's what makes this so flexible and easy, is I know there's going to be a lot of texturing on this thing, but I don't know what it is just yet. And since I'm at the beginning of modeling it, I know there's going to be tons of pieces, and I'm just going to build in a flexible way to address changing textures as I go. And I don't even have the full sketch yet. He only sent me the sketch for just the arm, so this will very much be built piecemeal and then put together later. So here I probably am texting or checking Facebook on my phone. There we go. I'm awake now. A little confused. So, just basically looking up close-ups of what objects need to be have new mapping coordinates. You can see there's a little unflattering bit of texturing there on the edges of that L bracket, which I do change later. So in here I realize some of these nuts are not in a place where you can see all of the geometry, so I'm pulling them out just a little bit here. Next time I'll remember to take my headphones home so that I don't have to narrate after the fact. However, I'm sure it wouldn't be as thrilling as it is now. Alright. I made that one shift in detail despite the fact that you're never going to see that. That's the kind of time we waste. Here I was just trying to identify what texture and material was on that particular piece. So here's the whole model. You can see I just have base textures on everything else at the moment. So I basically, through the rest of this, go through and isolate the various pieces and paste the mapping coordinates, make some individual adjustments. Here what I'm doing is, this is a relatively new piece I hadn't collapsed down, so that's what I'm doing. I'm collapsing the whole thing, attaching all the components. I like to reset the pivot point, center it, scale, and transform as I do that to each object. And later on, before we go to the animation stage, which we will cover, I'll explain why we do that, and then one other step that we do to preserve that we're not going to get any funny business during animation. So I just applied the texture, and I'm unhiding the rest of it so that I can now quickly grab the mapping coordinates and match the pattern up in some hopefully interesting way. Again, a lot of this will be for naught once the designer gets a hold of it and decides what he wants to change or how he wants it to look. But I'm gonna humor myself. So I'm just trying to find something that I think is interesting. Again, ultimately I changed this. Trying to be too clever. Okay. This is going to be the next piece. Okay, so what I did was select all of the faces with ID 1. I'm basically just reminding myself where I put everything, and because I'm going to detach the components that are going to get these new mapping coordinates to, again, just be versatile until the designers lock it in place, and then I'll collapse everything back down. So I'm just grabbing that material we just created, and I'm going to replace the one that's there in slot 1 with this new one. Okay. So I'm realizing that the best way to do this is to detach the pieces I want to use. I'm adding in that piece. Making sure I didn't miss anything. Make them all the same ID, and then detach them. Now I add all of them back, and I'm selecting the one that defines the gradient, and same thing, I'm just gonna move it into what I believe is an aesthetically pleasing place. And I can see some problems there, easily remedied. I think I detach these. Actually, I don't know what I'm doing at this point. Trying to figure out something that looks wrong. Pardon me. Yes, clearly I need to make a change there. So I'm figuring out what idea I'm going to give them. I'm just making some tweaks to the material. Do another quick render. Alright. And again, you'll see in the final piece I ultimately changed these around a little bit. So I'm going to grab the pieces that are going to get the new coordinates and detach them. And I don't realize that I just did that to the wrong piece. But I will, now that I'm in sub-object, and realize that, hey, it's the wrong piece. This is what you get when you see the reality of it all. Deleting those. I haven't figured out that I already applied the wrong material. Okay, making sure they all have the correct ID, which in this case is 1. I've got to apply the material to there. And I realize at that point I did it wrong. I'm not so smart, people. Okay, same thing. Grabbing the mapping coordinates that control the gradient and roughing them into a good place. And ultimately I could have also, which I might end up doing, select all the pieces and just give them all one mapping coordinate there that controls the gradient, but at this point I wasn't sure what pieces would get it and what wouldn't, so I took the time to just do it all individually. Plus I knew there might be a chance I had to adjust the scale on each one. I find that a lot of times I don't come up with the perfect way to do it until close to the end. Right here, obviously I'm selecting the fingers, and same kind of thing. Isolate and detach the pieces that are going to get the same mapping coordinates, and then apply the appropriate IDs and textures. Adding an edit mesh to all three. Now, because I have multiple selections, it won't let me paste those mapping coordinates, so I'm just doing it longhand. I'm selecting the pieces that should be the same, making sure they have the right ID. Then I'm going to do an invert and apply the appropriate one to the rest of them. Let me do the same thing here. So I just repeat those steps. So you'll see that after this I am basically rendering it from a few different views to try to get all these pieces to look good together. So I'm realizing here I wanted to change these to something else. Just wanted the mapping applied to just the selected objects, not everything else. Same thing here. Just using a realizing I just want to fit it to the object. And then apply the material. Same thing, making sure it has the correct number now that I switched the material. Reselecting the pieces that just get mapping. So throughout the rest of this, it's just rendering and making some subtle tweaks there. But I hope this was helpful, and keep your eye out for the entire piece coming up in a few months.